Welcome to Without a Trace, Season 6 Thoughts Show. Now, this video contains spoilers, including for earlier seasons, and it's a long video, but there are time codes for different sections in the description box. So just to get, some off-topic stuff to start. I lost it laughing at, let's go with the first take on the first challenge in the Cham Clowder Drawfee show. I really hope that's the first episode someone watches of Drawfee at all. You know, Stan Lee said every comic's someone's first comic. I really hope that, that must be amazing. The only way it could possibly have been any funnier for me would have been without context, maybe. Also, absolutely love the music video and love the part near the end. I'm gonna be vague for anyone who hasn't watched it yet. It's 58 minutes into an hour into the video. I love the recent college humor video, Your Overly Complicated Holiday Plans. I will never tire of seeing Brendan Lee Mulligan getting all worked up to the point where his face really conveys that he is basically losing his mind. You know, that and that video and the CEO series just keep them coming. They're incredible. So happy Renegade Cut made a video criticizing the revenge fantasy of Home Alone 1 and 2. Among other, watch the video if you haven't already. Among other things, he points out that Kevin chooses to go after the wet bandits himself rather than calling the cops. Say what you will about the third movie, and I'm not saying it's a good movie, not at all. At least he does try calling the cops more than once, in fact. Honestly, yeah, I guess the people who wrote that movie must have seen the other movies and must have been like, this is like super messed up. I'm okay with the slapstick where these guys should have died 10 times over, but he really should be calling the cops to just it's the slapstick at the end of the day, it's essentially for entertainment purposes. But the fact that he doesn't call the cops, yeah, it's revenge fantasy, yeah. Anyway, let's see. Now, getting directly into the... So yes, briefly, this season is shorter than the other ones, and, it was hit by the writer's strike. Like, I guess probably every show in 2007. So, every show, Lost is season 3, Heroes is season 2. I honestly forget, what about the 4400? It had 4 seasons. Yeah, I think one of them was during 2007. It ran from like 2004 to 8 or something like that. And yeah, for Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is still a ridiculously convoluted title. Just say Sarah Connor Chronicles. You don't even need a "the" in there. Who doesn't know who Sarah Connor is? Except, apparently, according to like a College Humor Online article, there was a Sarah Connor on Twitter who tweeted something about robots, or some pro software or something, and she apparently doesn't know the franchise, which, yeah, that really must have been an experience. But yeah, so let's see. And right, and like with, yeah, I think, yeah, last time I did a season of this to save, excuse me, to ensure that I don't think you can hear that. If I recall, the camera doesn't pick it up. But yeah, my washing machine is running, and it's being loud right now. But I'm pretty sure you can't hear it. If you can, apologies. I've closed every single door that there is to close between this room and the room that the washing machine is in. Let's see. Yes, right. I still have some carpal tunnel going on, so instead of writing, I understand that the following is probably kind of awkward for watching for the video, but can't be helped. I simply can't hold off on doing videos like this until my wrists are better. It's been a while now, and I love talking about TV shows too much to hold off on it. So, where usually you can't even really see, you can just see that excuse me, you can just see that I'm leaning in and doing something, which I'm noting down the time code so that you, the viewer, can skip between episodes. Instead, I'm going to be recording them on my there it is, smartphone, and yeah, like I said, awkward, apologies, can't be helped. Lost Boy 600. Now, Brian Bloom, very cool. He was in the A-Team movie, among other things. I realize that isn't the most popular. It's a fun film, and I acknowledge that not everything about it is, you know, I can understand people who feel that it's not completely respectful of the show, but don't say that it's not, oh, it's not as realistic as the show. Watch the show again. Just, I don't think you remember how it is not a very realistic show either. And I found it very enjoyable, and I've watched it a number of times by now. They do a fake out where we think that the kid is already missing, but then turns out he's on the stairs. And Vivian is working on the missing person from the end of last season. Jack finds a very creepy room. No opening sequence, instead the main cast is introduced via regular credits. I forget if that might be for every episode in this season. Certainly there was some. Yeah, certainly it's on this first episode, and it's on a bunch of the later ones. Maybe there are some episodes that do have. Excuse me. Yeah, that taxi guy is super creepy. I've got two ex-wives out there. That beats my one ex-husband. His two ex-wives are physically beating her one ex-husband? I feel kind of bad for the actor who plays the stalker. He must get typecast as creepy because, well, he looks a little creepy. Jack talks to Jen to get more information. Excuse me, I just realized I did not put my phone on silent. And it has been done. It's been done. I feel like this isn't even real. Like, maybe it's a piece of fiction, a 40-minute episode where, people can live vicariously and not actually experience a kidnapping or the like, but get the thrill of it. Why is it that running out of paint doesn't mean that someone was covered in paint and is running out of the sea of paint that they were in? It's just, I'll call you when it's safe. How could that bloody weapon possibly turn into a safe? Jack raises his voice at the wall, but Samantha gets results with a more empathetic approach. I do understand why Jack opted for that. Elijah does great acting, not only for his age. And Isaac is very hardened, clearly. Did they go on location for the scene in the Sudan? It's very convincing. I'm not saying did they go to Sudan. I'm saying they yeah, they probably found a place closer by. But I'm just saying it's very, yeah, actually, yeah, come to think of it, I guess when I made that note, I probably was thinking, did they actually go to Sudan? Now, they probably found a place much, much closer by, much less expensive and dangerous, and was Sudan dangerous? That's terrible with history and geography. And facts. Luol's story is heartbreaking. Jack and Samantha agree they don't want Luol to go to prison, so they're going to claim that Isaac was the only one in the wrong. And Vivian imagines all the kidnapped girls in there. And we have yet another great opener. I forget which season it was where it just did not play off the disc, but other than that one, which, for that one I can't confirm, but all the other season openers are great so far. Clean Up, 1040. Now, let's see. Seems to me like she's worse off than you are, sir. I just clean up. I can never take away what happened. Wise words. Wise, bewildering words. She's 4 months pregnant and has a history of miscarriage. Again in bad taste. Someone wanted to keep it dark. Unless that involves foreplay, it's never good. Now, yeah, I was wondering, yeah, I guess it's possible, since there is still a season left unwatched, I guess it's possible that it turns out other, but yeah. I can't help but wonder if that guy that Vivian is working with is involved with the kidnappings. I don't know, I have a feeling about him, but... And the mother is understandably very upset at being told her daughter is dead. How on earth did the bartender know all that was said at the table? She was not there for almost any of it. Yeah. And again, they treat a suspect getting a lawyer as inconvenient to justice. Justice is ensured by a swirly. And now Jack is about to strangle him. I do appreciate that it takes more than one flashback and more than one instance of convincing the person to give up the truth before the kid says all these, it says information things. I think I meant to say incriminating things. It's a relief that Leo is found alive. When we saw her with the pills, I thought she died from an overdose, but nope, we get another accidental kill. Yeah, I guess, yeah, so they must be like diet pills or something. I thought it was like, sleeping pill overdose. Nah. I appreciate how frequently the episode brings up that people think she's undesirable due to her weight. Bartender, Jay, my dad's lawyer kid, teacher, and more on the show of how nasty college guys can be to college girls. Res Ipsa, 1340. Now, you really don't want to agitate Candyman. What's backhanded? Everyone knows you have no social life. Teresa's been living with Christine, and Teresa's worried she should be deported from moving house. Christine's son Davis might still be alive. And Davis debates Richard. Now I remember why we broke up. Yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. There are 28 Richards on that list. Well, it could be an A-list. Don't depress me, I was feeling lucky. I really do hope that someone made like a fan edit of this episode, and like once once they had gotten through all the Richards on the list, that instead of, X amount hours missing, it says 28 Richards later. So that's a really horrifying montage, including waterboarding. Oh, hey, that's Alan from Sarah Connor Chronicles. And Francisco was in Planet Terror. So we find out that Christina abducted Ortega, and Danny suggests Christine might torture Ortega. And at first they don't get answers out of Richard, but then they tell him Christine abducted Ortega. Used to take him all over the world. I told him one person would make a difference. I put my ideas in his head, and then I just left him there. And we see what happened when Christine put a gun to Ortega's head. And Jack tries to talk Richard out of the torture, but eventually gives in when Richard says all he'll do is threaten. But when Richard does, cuts Ortega's finger off, Jack knocks him down, pulls his gun on him. You don't know what you're doing. That's the first thing you said all day that makes sense. And they pressure Teresa and realize she would feel better if Martin left the room. I really appreciate that, this is at least the second time. Wait, is that the first time? And then later this season is the second time. Anyway, there are at least 2 instances on the show. I guess possibly both of this season, where they realize that a person of interest would feel more comfortable. In this case, it's even an agent. But if a particular male is not, and the other one, I think it's that they maybe take him off that floor of the building, maybe out of the building entirely, in order to make the person of interest feel more comfortable, rather than say, well, as soon as you give us the information, you don't have to be near this other person anymore. Going with the more empathetic approach. And if you don't care about that, it does tend to be the one more likely to get results as well. And Vivian reassures Teresa. He's not suffering, so Teresa knows. And Teresa kills Christine in desperation, terrified that she'll be sent back. And this is also, this is technically not an accidental kill. It's a lot better when it's like in this episode. It's not accidental, it's out of desperation. What she was doing, she knew would kill Christine. She just thought it was the only possible way out of her situation. The accidental kills, it's a way to get, when it's 40 minutes of television with if I recall, they run, as far as I know, they run for an hour, with ads. So they need people to stay with the episode. They need to convince people to stay through ads over and over, and adding someone dying, in an episode, that's going to get a lot of attention. But if they have it be an accident, then technically they don't have to make a murder out of the character, but it's really contrived. And yeah, I really appreciate that they didn't subject the actor to simulating the rape. She talks about it in dialogue, but the only thing we see in the flashback is a man approaching her, taking off his shirt, and then touching her shoulder. It was unnecessary to show more than that, and they recognized that. Where's her body? In the water. See, now you're being helpful. And Vivian confronts Jack about Ortega. Excuse me. Baggage, 1930. Let's see. Right, this is the episode where Sam finds out that she's pregnant. Now, The cops shoot the black man, of course. It wouldn't be a police investigation if they weren't smearing the victim. The Reverend is played by Rose from Lost. Rhonda Brewer's stuck in the middle without Kenyon. Anna believes the gun was planted on Kenyon. Nice chart. Thank you. I'm very proud. And they talk to Wallace, the gang member brother. You ought to put better locks on those doors. You may have changed locks, but you didn't change locksmiths. Yet another flashback within a flashback. Are you sure he was going for the gun? I don't know, but in that moment, I thought, you were him. I get it. And Danny tells the cop he's going to be obsessing over the shooting for a long time. The beer's not going to help, and he's got to talk to somebody. Well, either you send him after her, or you got a mutiny on your hands. Great scene when Rhonda asks her brother to get Shorty to stop harassing Kenyon, which the voice typing the notes, it thought that Get Shorty was the title of the movie, which is, yeah. It's assault, it's kidnapping, it's obstruction of justice. Do you want me to keep going? Excuse me. To be honest, sometimes these guys go so deep there's no telling what they're thinking. And they look through the little book from Evan's apartment, figure out Evan is hiding with Rhonda at the family home, Cherry Bluff. He's dead, Viv. Seemingly Wallace called Evan 3 times the night of the shooting. Right after the shooting, but turns out it was the bouncer. And they figure that Rhonda is on the train to go see Wallace. Elena points out to Danny he's been weird all day. Is her acting improving, or is it just because these are short lines without long words in them? If this is the first of my videos on this show that you're watching, I really don't mean, I don't think that Rosalind Sanchez is necessarily, I have no idea about today, but when she did this show, I just don't think she was completely, the English language was still a little too unusual. She wasn't quite used to speaking English, at least not the long, complicated sentences that you have to speak in the show, especially if you're playing FBI, and if you have, she's one of the main characters, and I feel like her acting is better when she's speaking Spanish, and when they don't give her, these long expository lines. But yeah. We see more of Danny's flashback that we saw a glimpse of earlier. Rhonda did take that train. The actress who plays Rhonda gives a really great performance throughout this whole episode. I quite like that they have her wear a wire. The whole thing, it's so little time passes between you realizing that she wants to work with the FBI agents, and the reveal, that she was wearing a wire. So, like, the audience, like, we maybe just barely realize, oh, she must be wearing a wire, right before she reveals that she's wearing a wire. But they do a good job of keeping it moving fast enough. And, when you look at the things she was saying, they make sense to the brother, because she used to be a gang member too, so they used to talk about stuff that, yeah, sounds ridiculously incriminating. It's not, he doesn't talk like that to family that isn't involved with the gang, obviously. And, when she reveals she's wearing a wire, obviously he's not going to shoot her now. The cops are right there. You know, he'd only be shooting, you know, he's about to shoot her to stop her from talking to the cops. But the yeah, the cops are right there, and she was wearing a wire, so you know, if he did shoot her, you know, he'd be doing it out of spite, and that really, you know, she knows him well enough that he's not going to do that. And we learned Samantha is pregnant. Run 2540. Now, I guess I think we're going to try to get into a little more detail in this video since there are less episodes, and so far I've done 4 episodes in 26 minutes, so yeah. So the summary says Kelly Schmidt, later identified as Sue Cotton, disappears after an office shooting, but the case is tied into a custody battle and accusations of molestation. Very effective, shocking, you know, opening. You really don't see coming that this government, that yeah, this guy is going to walk in, shoot one of the women right in front of the other, making warm blood spray on the shirt of the other, and then he nearly spots her, but she hides. And yeah, it's saying something about the stream quality being affected. It looks fine from here, and I've gotten that warning before where it was okay, so. What, she took off? What, she got scared, took off? But it's been, what, 6 hours? Why hasn't anybody heard from her? It's a bad day when you've got 2 crazy people after you. Samantha just comes right out and tells Elena that she's pregnant, so it really is morning sickness. So when you know how you feel about it, let me know so I can respond accordingly. Here, Elena does a good job of coming across as nice and relatable. I don't want to get her in trouble. Maggie, she's missing. She's already in trouble. Surely there must be someone. Okay, there's Ralph, but don't call me Shirley. So she doesn't really need money. Why don't you write down all the information about the car you gave her? Because it's illegal and you're going to punish me? Elena tells us that the APB is tight. Sounds like a lot to canvas. Her name isn't Kelly, so when you see her, sue her. Kelly has a daughter. You will find her. I will find them. Are you high? Of course I am. She just got in the car and drove off like the devil himself was after her. Maybe he was. Put out an APB on it. Beelzebub Lucifer. In the car with Martin, Samantha sympathizes with the motherhood instincts of Sue. And when Susan tells Samantha the flashback, Byron is truly shown to be a monster. Very satisfying to see Jack confront Byron. Samantha tells Jack she's pregnant. Spoken like someone that hasn't had a kid yet. Where and why? 30,000. When a serial killer eludes capture in Nevada and escapes with the son to New York, Jack and the team pick up the trail with help of CSI Las Vegas team leader Gil Grissom Peterson. This episode concludes a crossover with CSI crime investigation that begins on Who and What. It opens on 2 hours later. Oh, so that's not blood, it's just like some kind of fluid that is supposed to be in an engine. So we already see the missing person from right away. And that's John Hawkes playing him. Very cool. He's a good boy. He sits, he stays. He plays football, I play piano. We tried to make it work for a while, but it's surprisingly difficult to do both of those things in the same place at the same time. I said Dad's dead! Clearly I'm not dead. I mean, you're not Haley Joel Osment. Immediately you get the sense that Jack wants to give Grissom the tiniest, most inconvenient room. Fun little moment between Samantha and Grissom. Decomp COD. I guess they talk like that on CSI all the time. I mean, it's easy enough to figure out what those terms mean. Decomposition and cause of death. It just sounds a little forced to me is all. But then I suppose there are probably things on this show that I've just gotten used to. Is that the first time Danny showed up in this episode? Almost halfway through? So the first time he killed it was his brother when he was a child. And he's wearing the medallion in the session. Nice work on getting the kid's face reflected in the car mirror. And unironic, we're in. And Jack claims he's going to arrest Sylvia for possession of stolen jewelry. Let's get Terry to come in. And Terry commits suicide. They did a good job building to that. You could tell that he either had or was given up as he spoke more to Jack. And Jack and Jill talk in the car. Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Jack and Gil talk in the car. Now, so yes. Absalom 3320. Now, I was only able to watch the very, very ending of this, so yeah, here's all you're going to get. Near the end, Martin says, "Get the medic in here." And that kind of line always reminds me of Starship Troopers. The enemy cannot press a button if you disable his hand. Medic! There we go. And Flight 3400. Now, yeah, the disappearance of Ultimate Fighter Brett Hendricks leads the team to investigate his background, where they learn the man had a number of enemies. They also learn about his motivation to become a fighter. After he was beaten up at school and he was afraid he enjoyed the fighting too much, Sam tracks down her baby's father. Poor Samantha awkwardly trying to get in touch with Brian the bartender and really not wanting to explain why she needs to talk to him and yet doesn't have any contact information on him other than this was the bar that, I feel like the season, there's a little bit of like a little bit of shaming of Samantha on this whole one night stand that leads to pregnancy kind of thing. I do think that, I mean, I guess it's a backhanded compliment to say that it could have been a lot worse, but I do think that it is, yeah, it could have been a lot worse, and I I'm not sure that I would necessarily say that the Samantha of some of the earlier seasons would necessarily be. It kind of feels like they wanted to have that kind of storyline because it again, that attracts attention. An unwanted pregnancy. I feel like in earlier seasons we've seen her to be more cautious when it comes to things that can have consequences like that. If she's not ready to have a child, it could really have a negative effect on this kid. But I do feel like once the other character as the other characters gradually realize that she comes right out and tells Elena and Jack. I forget if we see her tell the other agents, but excuse me, by the end of the season she's so pregnant that for sure they know. I feel like the it does a pretty good, yeah, the show and the characters do a good job of making, she says she wants nothing to change. She doesn't want to be treated any differently. And yeah, there's that line where Danny and Vivian, like, is she, why does she ask to, why can't she walk over here and get the file, or even just roll the office chair, but so they're like pregnant or lazy. Now, but yeah, I do appreciate that ultimately. I feel like if the outcome was that Samantha had an abortion or if she miscarried, I feel like that would have just been, emotional porn. And having not seen the next season, the finale ends with her having the baby. So I don't know how I don't know how big a role the kid plays in season 7, but see, it's difficult. You're always with this kind of thing. You're always going to have to walk this line of, on the one hand, you don't want to like make light of something like having an abortion. On the other hand, you don't want to imply that a woman, that, like, I mean, I wouldn't say that the show, I never get the sense from the show that they, that the writers think that there's something morally wrong with having an abortion. It's just there are right and wrong circumstances. The for the sex trafficking storyline, they they bring up that this one doctor performed multiple abortions, and could he really not have figured out that there must be like some kind of you know illegal, yeah, like sex trafficking, forced sex work kind of thing going on. Other than that, you know, yeah, they had an episode where there were right wingers trying to bomb an abortion clinic, and yeah, I would say the show is, yeah, pro-choice, but yeah, it's difficult. Ultimately, probably they figured that it would be it would be an element that they would like to have on the show. They wanted Samantha to have a baby, basically. Again, I don't know about season 7. I don't know if they're, exactly what they're going to do there. Actually, yeah, I suppose there's a bit of a mirroring because her mother definitely had a bit of a. She didn't. What's the word? Samantha didn't have the best childhood, and part of it was that her mother basically wasn't in, when she became pregnant with Samantha, she wasn't in a good situation for raising a child. And that's kind of the thing, Samantha trying to figure out if she is, and she, there's this debate on should she or shouldn't she be, how much should Brian have to do with the child and this whole thing. And the yeah, ultimately, they wanted to have her end up in a situation like that. And I guess I'm not sure, we don't really see a lot of scenes of her pondering whether or not she's going to have the baby. I feel like that, yeah, it seems like she made that decision off screen. And yeah, I guess I've pretty much said everything I have to say about that element. I feel like, yes, they did a good job of not leaning into this sort of becoming pregnant. That you don't really get the sense at any point that Samantha might end up resenting this child. And that's something, you know I that is something that sometimes happens, so it would be realistic to show that. But sometimes it's also important to get something, put something on screen that is positive and that might affect positive change. You know, the any anyone watching this storyline who themselves was an unexpected pregnancy, you know, yeah, with what they, you know, yeah, with how it was handled, I feel like they're less likely to feel like they were or are a burden on their mother and or father than if, yeah, you see stuff where it is depicted as this was just, you know yeah, this was a very difficult kind of situation. So, and yeah, but ultimately I'll hold off, my final opinion on the storyline until I see what happens in season 7 with the kid. But yeah, so getting back to my actual notes on the episode. Excuse me. Very intense cage fight. Whatever you do, don't hit him in the balls. If you want to take out an extreme fighter, you better be prepared. And Don is played by Clark from Good Will Hunting. A lot of these kids get in a few fights in the backyard with some friends and they think they can go pro. It takes a lot more than a stupid haircut and a beer buzz. And Samantha looks up Brian the bartender. It's been a long time since you were a scared little kid. Doesn't matter. I read the letter and it just took me back. excellent child actors. Flashback. Let's see. And Jack kind of implies that there's either something wrong or that it's a lie, that a white guy became Muslim in prison. The man that turned Brett violent is now no longer violent himself, which is of course hard for him to deal with, and it brings up whether he himself can go away from violence. You know, a lot of trauma, it kind of traps you in the moment of the trauma, so it can last for many years after the trauma. And if you encounter the person, if they're no longer, if they're the same person, then, to you it might almost feel like you're right back in the situation of trauma. But if that person has changed, then, you know, I mean, there are some people who unfortunately still do attack the person who traumatized them. I can understand where they're coming from, but it's obviously wrong. And ultimately, but yeah, some might feel provoked anew when meeting the person who traumatized them originally, if they're still doing or saying things that were like when they did traumatize them. And when Dawn gets a lawyer, Martin lies to Kira, the other suspect, that Dawn says she killed Brett. And Samantha confronts Brian about the pregnancy, and she wants him to sign the paper saying he won't go for custody. And the girl he's sleeping with right now wants to know how he knows Samantha. I do feel like that scene, I mean, it was a little, like, amusing, but yeah, what's the word? It came across as slightly judgmental, which, yeah, he had unprotected sex, and that, led to this pregnancy, but it's kind of like the implication is that he was irresponsible, and he's now going to have to admit to this, you know, we don't know if that's a one night stand or, yeah, I kind of get the vibe that that's a girlfriend. Yeah, a one night stand wouldn't be asking how do you know that woman? So yeah, there's a little bit of implied judgment there, and I just, the thing is, you can't really go in that direction without at least a little of it. Like, ultimately, Samantha also had unprotected sex when she wasn't in a relationship, which is, of course, that's the only time that matters. If you, yeah, that's not something I need to justify. And why is, huh? Well, I guess it's not. Okay, I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that because, yeah, basically AVG is activating advanced security functions. There's some chance it's gonna ask to reboot, and I just gotta tell it that I will do so later. I said later. Yeah, the that's really my main problem with it. Otherwise, yeah, I guess I've said everything that I had to say about it. Excuse me. One wrong move, 5,000. And yeah, it's asking about the rebooting, and I am gonna tell it to remind me later. There we go. And that should do it. When single mother Lindsay Bynum goes missing, the team determines if the ex-con's past criminal activity, embezzlement, caused her to disappear after visiting a prison inmate. Agent Johnson gets a possible break in her case, involving kidnapping of a young woman in a sex trafficking case. Excuse me. So yeah, more of the investigation of the sex trafficking ring. Excuse me. We see Lindsay Barnum, leave prison. It's not what you think, okay? You have no idea what I think. Jeez, we put on the Disney Channel. Pretty good burn. Still, there are worse channels. I'm told. I haven't watched that in like a decade and a half or something. I feel like that is a necessary clarification after a comment like that. Other than that crossover they did with BLR, that was amazing. Did my cell phone just? No, it did not. The episode really explores the pain involved when a mother is put in prison, even after she comes out of prison, the toll it takes on the family. And Lindsay has to balance convincing Ryan that it'll be safe so he doesn't worry, and convincing him it's dangerous enough that he won't go with, so she can protect him by keeping him out of harm's way. Lindsay's in way over her head. Samantha and Jack pressure her using the fact that Ryan is going to testify against her. So Lindsay actually went back and got in the car with Ryan. They find Angela alive. The thing about prison is it takes away the pieces of you. It takes away the pieces of you that make you a good person. As tiring as it is to see yet another accidental kill, the context of this one is pretty well crafted. Ryan's probably never going to recover from accidentally killing his mother, just as he was already never going to recover from her going to prison when he was 7. He genuinely felt that driving away, getting the money, would be the only way for them to be a family again, which is what he wants more than anything. And she did the thing parents sometimes do, where they'll accept extreme risk to take care of their child. In a certain sense, she never left prison, just like she started to say before he got in the car. Things are never going to be okay again. And Vivian realizes the supposed John was actually the enforcer. NYPD released him 45 minutes ago. Claus and Effect, 5350. Glenn Beckett, a child prodigy turned store Santa, vanishes, and the team wonders if he had criminal connections. They learn he is a brilliant mathematician who dropped out of college after having a crisis of conscience. Cute pun title. I understand not being able to resist the temptation. Appropriate that I record this video so close to Christmas. Teen Santa is super into it, and the kid is a total buzzkill. And the guy taking Santa's picture is also completely over it. So, let's see what fun we'll have with Teen Santa in the second scene. Oh my god, a gun. Please, no, don't do this. Really fun Santa jokes between Jack and Danny. So Santa's packing heat. I know what you did, you're a dead man. Mom? Actually, that does sound a lot like Benjamin Willis. I realized. the killer from I Know What You Did Last Summer. So someone didn't get their present this Christmas. Yeah, I had several jokes. I decided to go with all of them. Brenda is a fun character. Look at the profile. An old man with a fixation on prepubescent children wants to know if they're naughty. Hang out with it. Come on. My son had a gun. Your son is a son with a gun. The mom not only doesn't know about the Santa job, she doesn't even believe it when she first hears it. You could be the next Hawking. Maybe I'd rather be hawking stuff for a pawn shop revolver. Danny doesn't know what the Boris Klepper Award is, and Samantha suppresses a smile. So Glenn was attacked by a big fat Santa Claus. It was actually kind of hot. Okay, I'm calling it. This episode was written on a dare. Maybe he was a rival, like East Coast, West Coast Santa kind of thing. How did they manage to get that out without cracking up mid-line? That really goes to the professionalism of these actors. No matter how, like this episode and that one with Christina Hendricks, like they have such, you know, yeah, so some the lines are so much funnier than in regular episodes, and they manage to get through them without cracking up. You know, occasionally the show will get like what's the word? Yeah, they'll do an occasional like lighter episode, unusual episode, and yeah, and I appreciate that the characterization is actually largely the same for the main cast. Martin's person of interest is very useless and funny. I'm confused. I'm not sure I've ever been confused before. So you're confused about being confused. The real world is nothing like the world of academia. I know, they expect results. Samantha leaves a message on Brian's answering machine. You don't usually hear pain in the ass and Merry Christmas so close to each other. Family thing. I mean, that's absolutely 100% factually accurate. It is a family thing. So Glenn was going to use his knowledge about numbers to count cards and calling it making amends. Great job at selling the sort of analysis and playing during the card counting. I wonder if I might have a word. You just had 8, dude. Slow down. I was the least of his worries. He had Armand after him. So is that supposed to be what actually happened, or are they guessing? Because we very clearly see Armand grab the gun out of Glenn's hand. Just, you know, how could they possibly know that that's what happened? Yeah, I guess it must just be like a guess. Like, Fat Santa figured that that's what Armand would do. Well, then technically these people are going to lose their jobs. This is a model for downsizing, right? I appreciate that, sometimes I don't know from personal experience, but as far as I know, yes, some like mathematicians and such get lost in the kind of it can be kind of spellbinding, and they forget that this is, like she says, these are people. They're not just numbers on a chalkboard. real people are going to lose their jobs. You're not leaving, are you? She doesn't look like she's staying. Jack keeps pressuring Armand, and what finally works is telling him there's half a dozen cars outside the casino, and they might stay there indefinitely. Another flashback within a flashback. You asked me about my suit. I want my money, not your E-True Hollywood story. In theory, we came to an agreement. Do you have any witnesses that can corroborate the story? Hypothetically, of course. And Dr. McNeil makes yet another person of interest who lied about when they last saw the missing person. Please, just take the program. How can you possibly turn down a present from Santa Claus? That's not a real gun. It's actually fake, and it fires. Which backfires. So the lie backfires, and the gun fires regularly. The CEO is reluctant to hand over the flash drive. Martin and Danny bet on whether or not Martin would be able to figure out the genius solution, and he lost. He couldn't. And Beckett uses the 60 grand to buy the presents the kids want. Hey, why didn't you handcuff Santa? Actually, he handcuffed me. I've been a bad boy this year. Credit to the actor for, like, that is such a goofy-ass line. This, this show is usually much more serious and gritty, and literally, he just admitted to, I've been a bad boy this year, and that's why Santa handcuffed me. Yeah. He's not pressing charges, so Glenn is a free man. Give me the damn suit. It was the eyes, wasn't it? Everyone falls for the eyes. And the girl who plays Zoe was one of the kids from Village of the Damned. I forget if did it turn out that, like, the person that she was the one on the cover, or one of the people on the cover. Anyway, I forget. I didn't write it down, unfortunately. So 4G 10230. See, Malone and his team start off the new year investigating how private investigator Scott Lucas might have gone missing. The lone investigator had a special bond with a teenager, but a terrible foster home life, and the teenager tried to be like the PI. Good on Scott Lucas for calling the cops and trying to get the pimp to stop beating up the councilman. Instead of a person going missing, we see his entire car go missing, and then it fades back in the new location. The cop cars, fade in and then out. Good variation. Looks like someone did more than knock. And the recorder being voice activated, giving them a clue to start on. Call me ungrateful, but video would have been more to go on. Okay, Mr. Gift Horse in the Mouth Looker. He's never loquacious, but what's with Dictionary Boy here? Thesaurus Boy, I think, is more appropriate. That reference works especially well because he literally does use the word loquacious. I really feel bad criticizing Rosalind Sanchez for her acting because whenever she uses her native tongue of Spanish on this show, she does so much better acting. She clearly jumped into acting ESL too soon. You're stepping up to me? Looks that way. Scott is not afraid. And Jen's mother wants Jack to talk to Jen since the therapists aren't helping. But I'm in. Do you have any idea how long I've wanted to say I'm in the hacker voice? And Scott had a gun to the guy's head. She acts like I'm some kind of freak tiptoeing around here, like I'm going to break if she makes any noise. And it is, it's extremely difficult. How do you help someone who's been through something like that? And yeah, it's extremely difficult both for the person who suffered the trauma and the person most close to them. It really is, basically, I want to say the mother's name is Terry. She thinks that Jen needs as much, like basically if, you know, yeah, like that she needs to not pressure her, that she needs to let her, yeah, and Jen feels like, you're behaving so differently from before this happened, and yeah, Terry basically think, it's not, yeah, that she is worried that, if a sudden and or loud noise will scare Jen, will trigger a PTSD flashback or something because of the trauma. And meanwhile, Jen feels, they do a good job of. I really appreciate that they make that part of this storyline of the sex trafficking, that it, yeah, that Jack ends up with, you know, making it very personal with dealing with Jen. Scott wanted Adam to reconnect with his father once the latter was clean, but Adam doesn't want it and is angry about it. It's a very difficult situation because clearly the foster family isn't good for him either, but of course he's angry at his father. He feels betrayed, and he feels tricked that the father shows up at the door like that, but that wasn't what the. Yeah. You think I'm up to being a dad? Look, I got high. I wasn't gonna do anything wrong, but then I got high. I love both the original and the positive remix of that song, by the way. And find Mitch killed Scott so he could sell the equipment for drugs. And Scott was in a diabetic coma, not dead, thankfully. And Scott sent a letter to CPS. He wants to be Adam's foster father. And Samantha finds Jack drinking in his office. And he's drinking like scotch, I want to say. It should. They kind of passed up the opportunity to do. Yeah, I guess because of the serious subject matter, they didn't want to do a Jack, I see you've hooked up with your old friend Daniel's joke. And Jack feels really bad about lying to Jen, promising her that things would get better. And yeah, we see that he feels so bad that he genuinely can't, like, yeah. I I realize now I didn't note the, yeah, just briefly, the yeah, in the finale, excuse me, we don't hear Danny's, excuse me, answer to the question of, is Jack the best person to lead the squad. And the we're told after it cuts away from him saying he's ready to answer us, and us not hearing the answer, we find out that Jack was, removed from the position. So I guess there's a chance that Danny did say that he doesn't think Jack is the right. And it is, I do appreciate that there are actual consequences to the whole thing of, like, yeah, the he got shot. I'm gonna talk about, yeah, I'll talk about that more in detail later, but I appreciate that there were consequences to that, including this, yeah, an investigation, because what was he doing? Why was he in such a, he behaved in a very careless and self-destructive manner, and that brings up whether or not he's the best person to lead the team. They can't have someone who's going to, yeah. Now, excuse me. Article 32, 11040. Laura Richards, a veterans hospital worker who made the prosthetics for injured soldiers, disappears. The team learns she was involved in an anti-Iraq war group who was planning a huge explosion. She's trying to back out of it after hearing the stories of the injured soldiers. And yeah, that, one veteran really freaks out, as some people understandably do, about getting prosthetic limbs. And, he outright says, I can still feel my leg, and he points out it doesn't look like, it's that thing of, as they talk about, they don't have as much, they don't have enough money to buy the more expensive prosthetics. So, he says it looks like you ripped it off a mannequin or something. And it yeah, they try, they do their best, but sometimes that is the kind of, yeah, and they do a good job on that. If she's into selling hot cars, that's none of my business. I'm more of a giving away for free cold bicycles kind of guy. Ellerby, isn't that racist dragon? Well, not anymore. And we get a brief montage of Vivian figuring out who to hire. And it's again like, by the end of the episode, sorry, by the end of that sequence, it's back to serious, but it starts out a little goofy, and it's occasionally the show goes for like really funny, like, yeah, so how would you find him? I don't know, and just, why do you think you're here, dude? Just, yeah. So you're telling me the Laura was Breaking Bad? Yeah, I cannot do a good Jesse impersonation. Listen, looking in on confidential files is a great way to get yourself censored. Unless, of course, you have something I can use. Now, if that's the case, then why end it? Because I'm married. You can't ship me. Yeah, the guy came directly at Laura telling, nobody's leaving this place alive. You can really understand how she ended up shooting. And Vivian and the guy discuss them working together in the wake of him breaking the rules. He's the second guy to do that to her in this episode. Heartbreaking scene between Laura and her father. Hard reset. 114.50. Let's see. Jack goes missing after taking the case into his own hands, which soon becomes intertwined with a human trafficking prostitution case that Vivian is working on. So the show goes after a doctor providing abortions, albeit at least it acknowledges that normally it's not illegal. You know, doctors who perform abortions are already hated and in danger. You really shouldn't give more figurative ammo to people who have literal ammo and are willing to use it on abortion doctors. So Jack confronted the abortion doctor. Most of these are just names with vague descriptions. You know what, Martin? You are 2 for 2 on not trusting Vivian on the rare occasion that she's in charge. You really need to stop this. And they point out that something weird must be going on because Jack would have cleared his schedule and called them. You really want to tell us that you've never seen him before? Oh, him, yeah. I've seen him. I've seen him. We see Jack lying there with his gunshot wounds. He seems in a bad shape. Kind of convenient writing that they don't make sure to kill him. He's already down. If they use a single more bullet on his head, they can be absolutely certain. You know, double tap. Martin, we got something. I believe it's pronounced. You better come take a look at this. Great acting by Jen and Yvette. They bring in the woman who's winged. They offer a deal, but also tell her not to get a lawyer and won't give her anything in writing. She's hormonal. Come on, you're better than that. I'm talking both to Martin, the character, and the show itself. And Samantha sticks a finger in the gunshot wound. And they dump Jack's body, but it would appear they still haven't shot him in the head to make sure he's dead. And Samantha talks to Jack about if she can make good decisions once she's a mother. Listen, I'm going to need to know what kind of mess you're leaving me with here. Very nice job about, like, getting details, getting incriminating details while wearing the wire. You're asking me a lot of questions. Oh, he's starting to suspect about the wire. Are you watching The Wire? And Vivian threatens Roma that she's going to throw him off the roof and then fires her gun right next to his ear. Threatens to do it to the other one as well. I love the character of Jack, and I really don't want to see him leave the show, but the fact that he survived all of this, that is ridiculously contrived writing. I can kind of, I can kind of see how he did survive since his face was above, yeah. When we see them find him, his face is above water, so he's not like, he doesn't have a crazy amount of water in his system, which would drown him. So, if he had died, it would be from the gunshot wounds. And, they didn't, where they left him in the water, they didn't take him far out enough that, and they, like, they put a bag over him, and I feel like, I don't think we see him struggle to get out of it, but I don't think it would have been that difficult because they don't even, like, tie a rope around. They do such a half-assed lazy job of this whole, yeah. Let's see. Yeah. They wrote this whole thing in a way where they could get away with having him survive the events. I gotta say, this might be the most contrived writing on the show so far. I don't think there has ever been quite as, yeah. And, excuse me, the part of it, they needed something dramatic to bring in OPR again. You know, this is at least the second time. I don't think it's the third, but at least the second time that OPR has, you know, yeah. So they, give me a second. Let's see. Yeah, and they, you know, again, I don't know exactly what's going to happen with it, but like with Samantha having a baby, they wanted this, they wanted to end the season with Jack being demoted to street level, and you know, which they already did once. So I hope this is, I do think they did something interesting with it there, with Vivian only very briefly getting to, you know, be in charge there, and then the, but yeah, that wasn't because he got demoted. That was because he chose to take another job so that he could spend time with the kids. I'm fairly certain is what the, yeah. And then there's, you know, issues when Jack does come back and gets his old job back. I don't, I think they did they did something interesting with it the first time. The fact that they're doing it again, I just hope that it's not just the same thing again. But again, it's, yeah, I'm excited to see what they do in season 7 with Samantha's kid and Jack demoted to street level. And you know, they mentioned that Vivian is a likely, excuse me, a likely candidate for taking over the, yeah. Now, A Bend in the Road, 122:10. While struggling to deal with the aftermath of Jack's accident. Yeah, it's still recording. The team searches to find Diana Reed, a teen heart transplant recipient, believing her disappearance might be connected to her donor. They learn she was trying to find out as much about her donor as she could, and Samantha talks to Brian. Diana is played by Davy Chase, who played Samara in the first American Ring movie, and I believe she's also in that, what's it called, Donnie Darko movie, but it's been ages. It's been ages since I watched that movie, but I did very recently watch, I want to say it was a Wisecrack video on it, but I don't remember at all if it was Deep or Dumb or what went wrong or what it was of the. I feel like it was a Deep or Dumb video, but yeah. Let's see. Samantha gives Elena an update on Jack's condition. We all knit eventually. Wise words. Kelly isn't taking it very seriously, and Danny threatens her with 6 weeks of juvie. And Craig is the X-Men movies Quicksilver, and was he like also in Kick-Ass or something? I'm not. Yeah, I don't really have anything to say about those movies. To me, he's Quicksilver. Ah, second Quicksilver. Obviously, MCU Quicksilver is superior, but no. And it's not even that everything about the MCU is superior to X-Men. And I will always love the X-Men. You know, the first X-Men movie was probably the first time I saw a comic book movie, and I really felt like this is what, you know, as a comic book reader, this is what I want. You know, having watched the first 4 Batman movies, the first 4 Superman movies, yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty horrifying blog post. Yeah, Kelly, don't give E to someone who's had a heart transplant. Wow, you're really pregnant. Bren wants to talk to Samantha about the kid. and Jack's monitors go off. You know, ultimately in the relationship, both Brian and Samantha kind of put the other in an awkward position. Some, you know, I mean, like she says, why didn't you just tell me that you wanted to talk about it? Why did you tell me that you were ready to sign it and then show up and want to talk instead of having it? Yeah. So Diana's feeling bad about getting the heart of Jenkins. Jack wakes up and tries to get away, just like that College Humor sketch about old hospital scenes in movies. It really is ridiculous. Like, always goes like that. Just, yeah. I don't know how we're supposed to get over something like this. Sometimes the show does a really great job of verbalizing what these different kinds of experiences, yeah, very different kinds of painful experiences, what they feel like. I am going to make sure to put that in the notes. So, excuse me. Sometimes the show verbalizes feelings and what's the word? Situations, I guess. I'm not asking you. I don't expect you to respond. I'm thinking out loud so as to avoid dead air. Circumstance. Pomp and circumstance of trauma related to trauma. He just asked her to leave us alone. Then why are they both still missing? Davy Chase does really great acting here and elsewhere. And Tim tells Diana about the accident. I want to know why he's dead and you're alive. Danny and Vivian point their guns at Tim, and Diana tries to help by talking him down. I will grant that what she says is maybe a little bit too mature and like too mature for her age, and as far as we've seen her, like so far she's done some very irresponsible things. So suddenly she's very mature, and it's also unlikely that she'd be able to think so to be able to come up with to say something like that in a circumstance like that. And I guess honestly, very likely the most it would have been very realistic for her heart to have problems in that stressful situation. But yeah, I'm going to allow it. Your Honor, strangling the witness. I'm going to allow it. The yes. So yeah, if I recall, what she says specifically is, I didn't know Paulie, but I'm sure he wouldn't want you to do this. And yeah, wise words, but it's yeah. What I will grant, one element of it that I will definitely say is she has been thinking a lot about Paulie recently, so that kind of, you know what, actually maybe I was a little hard on it. I guess ultimately it does work with where her head was at the time. Yeah, fair enough. Samantha and Brian meet and talk about the baby, and she knows that it's a boy. Here's the thing, I don't want him to get attached to you, and then one day you wake up and decide it's all too much, then I'd rather he not know you at all. So my question is, can you be there for him? And again, that is, you know, I forget if, I think her mother was a single parent, so her father did leave because it was too, he just couldn't handle it. And I'm afraid I don't remember offhand. I think the father was there when she was very little, or yeah, at least I think he. I think she is speaking from experience there. I think she does know that. Yeah, so that's yeah. They're mirroring her. She's in a very similar situation to where her mother was, and she's making sure more to be very mature about the situation, and to be kind of, what's the word, very very responsible. And that was one of the problems with her mother. That's part of why Samantha had such a rough childhood. Her mother had not made, yeah, hadn't, there were these things that she did not take care of, and Samantha is trying to take care of them. And it's that thing of trying to make sure that your kid has a better life, a better upbringing, yeah, a better experience growing up than you yourself did, which is something that drives a lot of parents. So you're a cheesehead. Oh God, is that the only thing anyone ever knows about Wisconsin? Come on. Now they're actually kind of sweet together. Is Jack groaning at the idea he's going to spend the next several hours with Vivian, or that Martin is coming afterwards? Meow 1-1. A tiny cat called the police and saves its owner. You really are trying to kill me, aren't you? And Vivian just keeps reading it. Now, let's see. Deja Vu, 132.50. Deja Vu. Couldn't help it. The team searches for Jay McCann, a coma patient who had woken up after 3 years only to disappear. The team is led to another missing persons case, in which the person disappeared on the same night. The patient lapsed into a coma. Jack leaves the hospital and searches for the girl he saved from sex traffickers, and then kills her right after. Now, let's see. So, I guess... Right, yeah. For this episode, there was some problems with the... Ultimately, I was able to watch 35 minutes of the 40, so yeah. Just blink once for yes and 2 for no. Yes, yes. Gotcha. And you remember why you're here? I tried watching reality television without turning my brain off. 3 years. That is a lot to lose. 6 weeks later. They said that the odds of him waking up was 1 in a million. Now he goes missing. What are the odds of that? Nice try, show, but just because you acknowledge how preposterous the writing is doesn't mean it's not still preposterous. I like the scenes with Jack in the hospital, seeing the interactions between him and the other agents in this very different circumstance from usual. And Jay kind of reenacts Doctor Strange's drive. He hit a tree. Broke its nose. He was always very prejudiced against plant life. Yeah, I had to skip from 11 minutes and 20 seconds in the episodes, excuse me, to about 15 minutes and 3 seconds. Excuse me. Excuse me. I already felt it was contrived that Jack was handled by the bad guys with so little caution that it meant that he survived. But now Jack's walking around so little time after, just, yeah, I'm sorry, I do feel like they just push it a little too much, at least a little too much, yeah. Jack gets mistook for a junkie, which you can understand how, but then he threatens the guy with a gun and gets information. Man, that one punk is having no luck threatening people today, and I am here for it. Excuse me. We see Jay's flashback to, let's see, yeah, which the landlord couldn't possibly have seen or known about. Excellent job on the cinematography, editing, and sound work to put us in Jack's head. He clearly hasn't recovered from the gunshot. I heard you, Kevin. I heard you. Which incriminating thing did you hear? You're going to have to be more specific. So Jay heard something said to him while he was in the coma. I forget if that has been proven that they can remember what they heard while in the coma before they wake up, even if they do comprehend it. Yet another of the show's many accidental deaths. So Jack dreamt about the diner, and now we see it's the right place. So now Jack got hit by a van at decent speed as well, and he still manages to raise the gun and fire 2 kill shots. That's, yeah. And Jay is in a coma again. $1 and a Dream, 137.10. I guess I should just briefly. It maybe sounds confusing to the thing is, when I put in the time codes, I'm going to voice type those numbers, and all I really need are the numbers in the right order. I, because when you have that, then, and you put it in a YouTube description box, then it works as just, you click that and it takes you to that part of the video where, if I instead had said 1 hour, 37 minutes and X seconds, that, then I have to go in and edit a bunch in the voice typing. Now, after Lacey Moran, the latest lottery winner, goes missing, the team looks at her friend's family job and people she knew. That's kind of that's the concept of the show. That's what they do every episode. Along the way, the team becomes convinced that the lucky lottery winner wasn't so lucky after all, and she might have stolen the ticket. And Jack investigates Brian. You've done all the heavy lifting so far. Literally, you've lifted all the heavy things. Brian and Samantha are really cute together. Yes, that is different. Before I said they were sweet together. Not the same thing. In an earlier season, Samantha expressed that she didn't think this world was a good enough place to put children in, which clearly bothered Martin. Now she is choosing to have a baby, which she didn't expect to get conceived, but she is clearly worried about whether or not the father will be there for the baby. I'm not sure we've ever heard her stance on abortion, so we're not sure if it's that, she's changed her mind on whether or not the world is too dark a place, or if the idea of whether or not to have an abortion isn't even a question, that, she was never going to have one at all. Well, if she wasn't missing, I'd say she was the luckiest girl in New York. It's clear that Jack isn't completely ready to be back. He got the missing person's name wrong. They're called Harbulary bats. What's in the boxes? What's in the effing boxes? She feels bad about spending the money on herself when there are people who need the money. Makes me think the lottery ticket did not belong to her in the first place. The redhead doesn't exactly make herself sound very appealing in the flashback she relates to Danny, so you have to wonder why some of these people are so devastatingly honest. She didn't even know he was FBI, did she? You know, she's there talking about how, you know, I can't believe you you won't pay back the loan, and, you know, the crap, I forget the Lacey, yeah, is like, I mean, he needs it for his cancer medication. She's like, I got bills too, you know. Just, if he doesn't pay me back, you better pay me back. And it's just like, okay, we get it. You're in a bad spot too, but yikes. And Samantha talks to Jack about the situation. Really good job on the makeup on Jack. He has healed somewhat since last episode, but there are still wounds on his face. And yeah, and in the last couple of episodes as well, he's gradually healing, but there's, they make sure that it doesn't just seem to go away just like that. And Jack has Gale do a background check on Brian Donovan. He does tend to be suspicious of people, not to mention protective of Samantha. They find Turner in his car, but he's dead, Dan. Des said you could take whatever you wanted of his stuff. He can't lose something he never had. You should be a lawyer. And the son knows that it was his father's ticket because those are his and his mother's birthdays. And they realize, Paula killed Lacey and posed as her. And Paula is played by Christy from the Paranormal Activity movies. And yeah, so she kills Lacey over the money. That much money some people are willing to kill for, especially if they've never been rich before. And again, I really appreciate it's not an accidental kill, it is a kill out of desperation. And Gale tells Jack what she found on Brian. Sex with a minor, family didn't press charges due to not wanting the name dragged through the mud. When that time comes, call me. I'll make the recommendation. Just please don't show up on the day of my daughter's wedding. That would be rude. Comparatively, for my other videos of this nature, this is turning out to be very short. Driven, 143.10. Connor Baines, a man who recently saved a child from being hit by a bus, goes missing. The team is led to an old house fire that claimed the lives of 2 people while the police suspected Baines set the fire. Jack's mental health is evaluated by a psychiatrist, Linda Hunt. When Sam confronts Brian about his past, he discontinues everything to do with her or his baby. Jack is watching Jen in high school. I appreciate that Jen points out to him, I have to pretend like things are still normal. This is, yeah. We have a guy waking up in his car from a traumatic flashback, and then we see a piece of machinery doing its thing. Is this Terminator 1? Because I like that a lot. Looks like someone put a lot of holes in this thing. Those are speed holes. They make the car go faster. Samantha is very happy here at the start of the episode, and clearly that's not going to last. What with Jack bringing her Brian's background check info. Everybody's calling you a hero, Connor. What went wrong? Usually people introduce themselves before they sit in my chair. Well, Jack, you're always telling people to sit. No need to get your panties in a bunch. Obtain your underwear individually. This is my toe, Barnes, he said, frankly. And like, frankly, because he's frank. And he's speaking in a frank manner. And Jack tells Frank they don't need proof to get him convicted. I went to go have a chat with him. This is my chain. He's named Link. He does all my talking. Then you won't have a problem giving us a sketch. No problem. I actually have an improv troupe. And Samantha confronts Brian. Turns out Brian actually has a good defense. And Connor admits, it's just, traded one high for another. He, getting the high of being a hero instead of the high from heroin. And they think that Baines started the fire. Yeah, and this is the part with, lazy or pregnant? Lazy. So you drove 1,000 miles to get revenge. Some people would walk 500 miles and then 500 more. But a car's more convenient. And Connor does blame himself for them dying in the fire, even though he didn't set it. He's not me, but he's more than capable. I mean, he knows what he's doing. Not capable. No capes. The amazing thing about this OPR investigation isn't what you did, it's that you've done it all before. Tell me about Jen Long. I quite like the Doctor, very compelling character. Same actor played Grandma Willow in Pocahontas and narrates God of War games. I'm not going to make any excuses for Pocahontas, but Grandma Willow was a pretty decent character. Samantha confronts Jack. Brian signed the waiver. I just did what I thought was right. How long are you going to keep using that as an excuse to screw people over? As much as I don't want to see that gang member kill Connor, he's dual-wielding Berettas. That's really cool. They find Connor alive. And Jack talks with the doctor about his dreams. And finally, last episode of the season. Satellites, 148 to 10. When 5 people with an old connection are all abducted from a local coffee shop, the team learns about an old case that involved child molestation by a counselor at a summer camp. Meanwhile, Sam gives birth while the department opens an inquiry on Jack, talks to his staff, and demotes him because they feel he is unfit to lead the department. So the missing people disappear right after one guy walks in. Yeah, I guess this is the first time Elena faces the OPR, isn't it? Last time Jack and company faced them was before she joined the show. Alex warns Vivian against going outside the rules. This seems like an extremely difficult case to crack. Makes sense for a season finale. We take everything seriously that we hear through the tip hotline, especially from citizens of Saturn. And Jack senses there's problems in the marriage. Danny wants them to tell the truth, and Lena feels like it's personal. And your point is what? I don't know. When Sam and Elena talk, you can really see that Sam is affected by the pregnancy physically. Bob is played by Commander Thread from Catching Fire. When he yelled, "Get out," I knew it immediately. I looked it up to confirm, but the moment that his mouth I don't know. It's just he's very like yeah. I forget. Did someone refer to him as like a Clint Eastwood impersonator or something? It's yeah. I like the swang. And Martin defends Jack to OPR, and so does Selena and Samantha. Vivian doesn't want to answer the question, but we don't see Danny's answer yet. No, I don't. I mean, I don't need a moment. Clever phrasing for a second there. You know, it almost sounded like he was for sure saying that Jack wasn't the best person to lead. And we're told Jack is back on the street. I want you to know that I fought for you. This could have gone a lot worse. Next time won't be so lucky. No, the right response is there won't be a next time. And Samantha thinks she's gone into labor and says, you know, there isn't anyone they should call. I can't stop the bleeding. Isn't that an 80s song by Journey? And Bob refuses to put the gun down, and Vivian shoots him in the shoulder. I have to admit, for the first half of this episode, I honestly thought it was going to be a two-parter. That they just weren't going to be able to find all these people within the second half of the episode. You found me. I'll bribe the stork. Rare to see Samantha smile quite that much, but it's nice. So we don't see Samantha give birth. You know, sometimes scenes like that can be great, but yeah, it wasn't really necessary, and yeah. Does he have a name? Not yet. I'd like to throw Malone into the ring. Noted. No, I mean, you don't have to do it alone anymore. So, yet another great season finale and another great season. So, yeah, I guess that. Let's see if I have any in closing. Let's see. I mean, I've already said the thoughts I have about season 7. It seems like an interesting like status quo change-up, which there hasn't been many of on the show. So I'm interested to see where they go with it. And yeah, I feel like, you know, what's that, excuse me, what's that thing from the Blade the series pilot? Could go either way on this one, you know. It's I mean, I don't think the addition of Elena was a good one, and that was obviously a status quo change. But that's more of an yeah, like I already talked about. I don't think the actress was quite ready for so many such complicated lines in English. Clearly not her native tongue. But yeah, I think it could be. You know, it's kind of like on one hand you have a show like this that does very little to change up the status quo. Like when there are big things, the characters tend to bounce back. You know, Martin did beat the addiction, and you know the conflict between Danny and Martin, as heated as it got at times, really didn't. You know, not it's not like either of them had to leave the team over it or something, and Vivian is still working under Jack despite very temporarily working, you know, leading the unit and then losing that really quickly. And yeah, so various, but yeah. On one hand, you have a show like this that does very little, and then on the other, you have a show like Alias, which is always changing up the status quo. You know, there's some good and some bad to both. You know, I would say that over the course of Alias, we got to see a number of different and compelling status quo. Status quos? Or status quo already? I don't know. And with something like this, well, basically this show, if you start, if you watch the first episode as the first episode you ever watch, or if you watch like, yeah, like hypothetically, if I hadn't watched a single episode of this until then, like one of the last ones from this season, there's a couple of things. You have Jack having been shot, and this whole thing. But other than that, it's not like it has a million different subplots going. And usually you have Jack shot and you have Samantha pregnant, and that's that's ultimately it. Other than that, it's not the status quo is uncomplicated on this show, which again, Alias, like right off the bat, like you could, yeah, every season of the show has a very complex, which is part of why, eventually the network were like, nobody can follow the show. You have to do something, and yeah, the let's see, what was I thinking of? But yeah, it seems like the biggest status quo change, or at least potentially the biggest. The Yeah, and considering they end the season on it, I do hope that they do make something interesting. I mean, the an earlier season ended on the cliffhanger of Danny and Martin getting shot at the very least, and that ultimately led to Martin being addicted to painkillers, and that, yeah, there that was a storyline for a while, and I mean, hypothetically, maybe in season 7, I don't know. I guess there's some chance that like a suspect pumps him full of painkillers to, you know, to get a, yeah, to like get a head start on running, and then he has to deal with that, or something. But yeah, the I'm excited to see what they do in season 7. I looked up earlier. Apparently, season 7, like, it wasn't really so much supposed to be the last season as just they didn't renew the for an 8th season. So yeah, I really hope it's not one of those where it ends in a very open-ended kind of way. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, if whether you've watched one episode, 10 episodes, or several seasons worth of episodes, very gradually over time, there's some characterization, or background information rather, and development, of the agents of this, show regulars, and let's see. So that was one thing I want to say. What was the other? But yeah, ultimately, like, the status quo changes so rarely that ultimately the only thing that'll have changed is how many cases you've seen them handle. It's not really that there's, which again, comparatively, it makes a huge difference whether you've watched an episode of Alias or one season, 2 seasons, and you are really out of luck. If you try to skip very much of that show, you will be completely lost. So, yeah. But I guess that is everything that I have to say. So, with that, yes, excited to, in 3 weeks will be the season 7 thoughts, and then another 3 weeks should be the show review after I've rewatched, 3 episodes from each season. So that, yes. I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch you.